Next up is the Venerable Bede, another important figure in the north of England in the 7th and 8th century. I'm actually doing them together with Cuthbert, recording around the same time. I actually debated changing my shirt to make it look like it was sort of a different day or something like that. But to be honest, I only have about 5 or 6 shirts, so you all would see a lot of repeats anyway. Venerable Bede lived from around 673 to 735, so a little bit later than Cuthbert. He's called Venerable not because he was particularly old. He died around 62. Venerable instead refers to the respect that he earned. Now, he was also active mostly in the north. Bede was sent as a young child to the monastery in Monkwearmouth, and he was educated originally under the Abbot Benedict Bishop, who I'm hoping we'll meet a little bit later in our journey. And then later on, he was educated under the Abbot Ceolfrith. I may do sort of an aside on Ceolfrith as well. Bede was made deacon at the age of 19 and ordained priest at 30 by John of Beverley, who was the Bishop of Hexham. Bede was known as a scholar, an author, and a teacher, taught on many, many different topics. One of his prominent students was Alcuin, who goes on to become a senior advisor to Charlemagne. Alcuin actually takes the model of education that he learned under Bede and imports it to Charlemagne's court. And so you can actually kind of draw a straight line between Bede and Cuthbert and those folks onto the educational model that appears in France later. Bede's best known for his work, The Ecclesiastical History of the English People. He also waded into the great debate of the age, how to calculate the date of Easter. This is sort of a holdover from the Roman Celtic complications. He also wrote commentaries on the Old and New Testament, wrote sermons for church seasons and major historical events, and he wrote histories, lives of saints, including the life of St. Cuthbert, both in poetry and prose. He's a key figure in translating and transferring knowledge and writing from the late classical period into the medieval period. And his work on Easter led him into working with astronomy. Did a lot of work calculating the length of daylight in a spherical Earth, yes, spherical, not flat, and also the seasonal motion of the sun and the moon. He also recalculated the age of the Earth, kind of looking through the scriptures, that kind of thing. Came up with a date that was not approved and was declared a heretic by St. Wilfrid. What are you going to do? So his work spread all over Europe, and he's honored as a holy person and a great scholar, a mathematician, and an astronomer. And in 1899, he was declared a doctor of the church, the only native English person to be so honored. So Bede has a long shadow, particularly his work in history and documenting what was going on. He's regarded as a very important early medieval historian, and also an important person in forming the educational system in the early medieval period. So that's the Venerable Bede. There's a lot of construction on the entrances to the cathedral right now, and so they have you enter through a side chapel, and it turns out that chapel is actually where Bede is buried. It was a little bit strange, as people were kind of queuing up through the chapel to get to kind of do your admission donation, and kind of walking past Bede, I overheard one young woman say, "Oh, this is Bede. He did something." And it was a little bit startling. I noticed that the last time I was at Durham is that Bede really gets second billing. So looking at the Shrine of Bede and being there in that space, one of the things I was really struck by was how Bede was so well known as a teacher and an educator and a translator, and there was something really powerful about that ministry of handing on wisdom to other people and having an impact through others. I found myself coming back to that as I was in that space.